Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the second episode of Chanakya Niti. This is a limited series that we have launched last week, and under this series we are attempting to understand Kautilyan thought and see how it is still relevant in contemporary geopolitics. This is an opportunity for all the civil services aspirants to broaden your thinking about geopolitics and political science. It will not only help you in your GS papers, especially under international relations and internal security, it will also help you if you have political science and international relations or even public administration as your optional subject. It could also help you in your essays and interviews as well. And in general, it will broaden your thinking as we are studying Kautilyan thought, understanding the thinking of Kautilya or Chanakya as depicted in the Arthashastra, and we try to apply this in the current context to make it a more interesting conversation, to see how Kautilyan thought can explain India's foreign policy approach and current global geopolitical challenges. So this series goes live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and we want your full support to continue with the series. If you guys are liking this unique initiative, do support us with more likes and more comments so that we are encouraged to bring out more such initiatives. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So let's begin the discussion by talking about Kautilya's Upayas. The topic for the second episode would be the Upayas suggested by Kautilya in the Arthashastra to resolve and manage conflicts and to handle foreign relationships. See, in the first episode, we studied the Mandala theory of Kautilya. Mandala theory mainly spoke about categorization of different kingdoms into Aris or Mithras, that is essentially enemies and friends, and it spoke about forming alliances and counter alliances to protect your interests. So when a country deals with other countries, it could be neighboring states or countries in the immediate neighborhood or countries located far away. Countries will have certain issues and disputes and conflicts. At the same time, there will be many areas of cooperation as well. In order to drive a friendly relationship and to maintain stable relations that can benefit the host country, the king in this case, Kautilya suggested 4 different paths which can help the king and the kingdom to avoid conflicts, especially a full-out war, a full-blown-out war. Kautilya suggests that if you don't manage your conflicts well in any relationship, it will eventually reach a situation where a full-fledged war becomes inevitable. In fact, this is true of any interpersonal relationship, right? This applies even to our personal life. In any relationship that you have, right, if you don't manage the conflicts well, if you don't know how to approach those conflict areas, and if you don't resolve them immediately with the right methods, it could lead to a full-blown-out conflict situation. So Kautilya suggested to the king that avoid war at any case. In any possibility, try to avoid war because wars are expensive, wars are cost prohibitive, and it delivers a significant damage. Even in today's geopolitics, we say that wars occur only when diplomacy fails. This is very valid in today's world. You look at the current global order, the conflicts going on around the world, the Russia-Ukraine war, what's happening in West Asia, the latest attacks between Israel, Iran and its proxies. It clearly shows the cost of war, not just the money aspect, the financial aspect of war, but even the human cost of war is clearly shown in these ongoing conflicts. So no wonder Kautilya suggested to the king in the Arthashastra that avoid war at any cost. He suggested that in a divided world, it's easy to get into conflicts. When you have relations with multiple countries, there will be some Ari states, some enemy states. Some enemies of the country would have formed alliances and they might be trying to jointly target us and counter us. But if we don't learn how to manage that relationship, if we don't learn how to build friendships with others and force even Aris to become friends, if we don't know how to do that through diplomacy, then eventually war will be the outcome. And Kautilya suggested in the Arthashastra that wars can be easily triggered. It's not a big thing to start a war. Anybody can start a war. but there's no guarantee that you're going to win a war. You might be superior compared to the enemy, but eventually you might be defeated. Look at what happened with United States in Vietnam, in Afghanistan. Look at what's happening to Russia with Ukraine. Despite their superiority, they have been pushed back by a weaker opponent. So there's no guarantee of a victory in any conflict. Wars are unpredictable according to Kautilya, and this advice is pure gold, not just in ancient times to the king, even in contemporary times to world leaders. This is pure gold as an advice. He suggested that wars are unpredictable in nature. You can easily lose a war just as easily you can win a war. So as much as possible, rely on diplomacy. Try to avoid war at any context. So to avoid war, diplomacy is the solution, right? So if war occurs between two states, it essentially means diplomacy has failed between them. Peace politics has failed between them. This is where Kautilya propounded the Upayas, the 4 Upayas, or the 4 ideas or approaches or strategies to diplomacy, to peace politics, to prevent conflicts from escalating into a conflict. Today we are going to study these 4 Upayas, understand the theory behind this, and apply this in the real world in today's geopolitics with examples. I think that is what makes the session more interesting for you. So the term Upaya is a Sanskrit word meaning idea or approaches, or even it could mean strategy as well. When you're trying to solve a problem, you need an approach, you need a strategy, or you need an idea. So that's what Upayas mean essentially. In fact, this finds a reference even in ancient Hindu and Jain texts, and it refers to methods of diplomacy. The term Upayas seen in ancient Hindu Jain texts refer to different methods of diplomacy. So Kautilya propounded 4 Upayas, and that is exactly what I'll explain in the next few minutes. But before that, take a look at the other important statements noted in the Arthashastra, which is attributed to Chanakya. Kautilya said, if Upayas fail, if your 4 strategies of diplomacy fail, then you should try Shadgunya, the 6 forms of non-warfare pressure. Kautilya came out with another strategy to avoid war. If diplomacy fails, if the 4 strategies of diplomacy fails, then instead of going to a full-fledged war with the opponent, you should try non-war pressure, basically different types of coercive methods, engaging in coercive diplomacy to pressure the country, to threaten a country, to prevent the worst case outcome, which is a full-blown war. In the next session, we will try to study these 6 principles of non-warfare pressure. In today's world, you can compare this with grey warfare. You might have heard of grey zone warfare, a type of hybrid warfare which lies between peace and war. Many aspirants have a wrong presumption that in geopolitics there are only 2 options, either you remain at peace or you are at war. But that's not the case. There is a middle ground as well, where you are simultaneously at peace and at conflict, and this falls under the domain of grey zone warfare, as we call it in today's geopolitics. And Kautilya spoke about this concept centuries ago. This is nothing but Shadgunya, the 6 forms of non-warfare pressure, different coercive tactics and hybrid methods to pressurize a country and achieve your interests while preventing a full blown out war. So we will study Shadgunya in the coming episodes, but today let's focus on the Upayas. Kautilya said, when everything else fails, use military force only as a last resort. Until then, a king should try to outwit the opponent. Use psychological warfare, use covert intelligence operations, use your economic military leverage to threaten, to intimidate. Use any measure available, but prevent war, avoid the war because it's costly, there's no guarantee of a victory, and more importantly, war could lead to destruction. It could destroy the kingdom, the stability, it could lead to a humanitarian tragedy. And hence Kautilya suggested that war and using military force is the last resort for a king. And again I say this advice is pure gold even for current leaders in contemporary times, given the uncertain situation that we live in. So let's see what are these 4 Upayas. I am sure all of you would have heard about Sam, Dan, Dand, Bhed. These are nothing but the Upayas of Kautilya, the ideas, approaches of Kautilya to diplomacy. So, these are approaches to peace politics, or we can say that these are 4 strategies in diplomacy when you are dealing with another country. The country you are dealing with could be a Ari, meaning could be hostile, could even be an enemy state, or could be a Mitra or a friendly state. When you are dealing with any country, building a bilateral relationship with them, you need to employ these tools of diplomacy, these peace politics, these different approaches to ensure your interests are protected at all times. Because always remember, in the world of international relations, what matters to a country is self-interest, or what we call as national interests. Even when compared to values, principles, ethics and morals, it is the realistic approach which matters for every country, and that is how it should be in international relations and geopolitics. So, to protect the national interests of a country, Kautilya suggested these 4 upayas. Sam, referring to conciliation, meaning you talk to your opponent, you convince them, you try to gain their support, gain their friendship. I will explain what those strategies are with relevant examples. Dana, you give gifts, donations, concessions. You create an incentive for the other country to like you, to be a partner with our country. Then if these strategies do not work, then you employ Bheda, where you sow discord, where you try to isolate the opponent, where you try to pressurize and corner the opponent and breed dissent within the country or maybe within the alliance to weaken the opponent, to weaken the enemy. When all these strategies fail, finally you resort to your hard power. Danda, you punish by using your military force. And even here, Kautilya had different types of non-war pressure and eventual attack. That is what we call as Shadgunya, 6 types of non-warfare pressure, which falls under the Danda strategy itself. When you are punishing a country, do not assume it is an all-out war. Even without fighting an all-out war, you can still punish countries through different methods. Even without going to the last resort, you can still use other methods available to intimidate and threaten and still protect your interests, which helps you avoid the possibility of a war. So, in Arthashastra, war is the last option, only when it is unavoidable, only when there is a genuine threat to your integrity, your sovereignty, the stability of the state. Only then war is advised. Is this clear? So, in the coming episodes, we will have some interesting discussions on this topic. We will talk about covert warfare, warfare strategies, ethics in warfare as suggested by Kautilya. Today, let us have a more detailed look at these upayas one by one. I will start with Sam, or conciliation. Conciliation in the Arthashastra has 5 different meanings, meaning there are 5 different approaches suggested by Kautilya to build conciliation. He suggests to the king that when you are building relationship either with a friendly country or a hostile country, you should always win their favor. You should always try to please them. You should try to appease them. Basically, use flattery, praise them, appreciate them, award them, reward them. This is largely verbal. Sama or conciliation is more about the verbal gestures that you are making. Now, if you think about this, we do this in our personal lives as well, in our interpersonal relations, right? If you want to ensure someone likes you, right, what do? You praise them, you appreciate them. So, praising someone based on their merit, whether it is actual or not, whether it is perceived merit or real merit, praising someone will boost their ego. This is human psychology at work, right? It works in interpersonal relations as well, it works between countries as well. So, Kautilya suggested to the king, as part of Sama or conciliation, the king should praise the leader of the other country. Publicly, openly, you should keep appreciating, you should keep lauding their achievements. Even if they haven't achieved anything, you should still go out and praise them so that you soften them. When you boost their ego, it becomes difficult for them to have a difficult relationship with you or to be hostile to you, right? So, this is a psychological tactic. It is a psychological tactic where you are weakening the opponent without them knowing about it, and that too in a non-offensive way. You're praising them, appreciating them, boosting their ego and bringing them in your good books. You're expecting a return favor from them because diplomacy works on reciprocity. It's a world of give and take. You give something in return and you get back something in return. Now let me give an example for this to justify this argument. Recently, when PM Modi got elected for a third consecutive term, the leader of Pakistan, Nawaz Sharif, of course, Nawaz Sharif hasn't become the Prime Minister of the country. It's his brother Shehbaz Sharif who's the current leader. But don't forget, Nawaz Sharif still calls the shots. It is his party which heads the current ruling coalition in Pakistan. So Nawaz Sharif praised Modi's leadership, tweeted about the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, how he has been leading India. He congratulated him on the electoral victory in June 2024. He indicated that PM Modi would not have been elected for a third term without being a remarkable leader, a tall leader. So this is an attempt to praise the Indian Prime Minister. Whether genuine or not doesn't matter. This is about appreciating the other leader or the other country, lauding them, praising their efforts, their achievements, whether genuine or perceived, and trying to win their favor, gain their support, ensure that you are indicating that we are on the same page. So this was an outreach by a new Pakistani government towards the new Indian government, because even Pakistan went through recent elections through which a coalition government was formed, which is headed by the party of Nawaz Sharif. His brother Shehbaz Sharif is in power. So this was a clear outreach intended to praise the Indian Prime Minister, a strategy of Sama, conciliation, sending out a message to India that Pakistan looks forward to a peaceful relationship with India. At least the civilian government looks forward to a peaceful relationship with India. We saw the same happening just few days ago between India and United States. Just few days back, PM Modi was in United States for the Quad Leaders Summit and for the UN Summit. So US President Joe Biden praised Prime Minister Modi's character and leadership, and PM Modi reciprocated. He praised Joe Biden, who is in his last few months of his presidential term. This is more of a gesture. As I said, this is more of a verbal diplomacy. See, you're not doing anything. You're not actually giving some benefits. You're not actually promising something. You're simply making these statements. It's like how your relatives, they speak good in front of you, praise in front of you, but they speak behind your back, right? Something like that works in diplomacy. At least in front of the world, you create these photo opportunist moments where you give these strong handshakes, hug each other, the body language matters. You send out a message that you like the other leader, you like the other country. So this sends out a strong visual message, a symbolic message, and Kautilya understood this thousands of years ago, right? So that's why I said his advice is pure gold. It's very relevant today because it's all based on human psychology. It's based on interpersonal relations. Next, as part of conciliation under Sama, you can give awards, give a high honor to the leaders of the other countries. Why do you think countries give out these awards? As you know, PM Modi and even former Indian Prime Ministers, Manmohan Singh, Vajpayee and others, they have been recipients of several awards given by other countries. They are trying to impress India. It's not that it's a competitive award which they have won. The award is largely a gesture towards the country, towards the government, towards the leader. It's a form of appreciation. India also gives out such awards which sends out a symbolic message. Have you heard of the Indira Gandhi Peace Prize? Last year we gave this to a Jewish and Arab activist who are working to promote peace between the two communities, between the Jews and the Arabs. We gave the award to these activists, which was a clear signal by India on the Israel-Palestine question, where we stand on the Israel-Palestine question. It was a clear indicator in the midst of the Gaza war which had broken out. India sent out a message to Israel and all the other concerned Arab states that we prefer peace. We want peace and stability. We want the war to end. We want Palestine to be established, living side by side in peace with Israel. That was the symbolic message India sent out through this conciliatory gesture. By awarding one of India's highest awards to these Jewish Arab activists who are working towards peace between the two communities, we sent out a message to the countries as well. That is how Sama can work. You can use this to send out messages, to send symbolic gestures, right, to praise the other side and win their favor and support. As part of Sama, you can even leverage your common links. Again, it's a psychological game. You can say that we are all alike. If you are dealing with a certain country, you can say that people of our country are similar. We are connected either by religion or ethnicity or by history. We are connected. For example, when India organizes the Voice of Global South Summit, what is the message we are conveying? We are saying that, look, we are all developing, underdeveloped countries. So we understand your pain. We are going through similar problems just like you. When India launched Voice of Global South Summit during the last year's G20, right, and reached out to the developing, underdeveloped part of the global south, that was the message India was sending out, that look, we understand your developmental problems. We know why you're struggling with education, healthcare, because we are having the same problems. We know how to tackle poverty. We have dealt with that. We can help you. So you send out a message that we are alike. We are similar. So usually those who are similar don't fight. Even in your colleges, for example, you would have different groups. People who are alike, like-minded, they form a certain group. You don't usually fight with them. You don't have rivalries, enmity with them, because you guys have common connect or a common interest which keeps you together. So leveraging the kinship, the common links, religious, ethnic, social links, and saying that we are alike has a big psychological impact, right? This is how the feelings of patriotism works as well. Nationalism works by saying that we are all Indians. That binds us together. I don't know you, you don't know me, but we will together cheer for India, right? So this is a psychological game again. By saying that we are alike, we are part of something which is bigger and we can solve our problems together. We do this with many countries. With Nepal, for example, we leverage our historical cultural links. We leverage the Hindu-Buddhist linkages that binds India, Nepal to the ancient Indian civilization. Why do you think PM Modi, when he visits Nepal, attends these important events, be it delivering a speech on Buddha Jayanti, visiting Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Buddha, or inaugurating a Hindu temple at Janakpuri, which is believed to be the birthplace of Sita Mata? We are tapping the Hindu-Buddhist connection, saying that, look, we are from the same religion, we are from the same civilization, we are alike, we are the same people. So let's work together. That creates a certain bond and it has a psychological impact. This is also part of Sama. Next, the third approach in Sama is to make the counterpart believe that cooperating with you is in their own interests. Is that clear? It's like you telling your crush that marrying you or dating you is the best option for them, or it's in their best interest. So it's like that. And this works in diplomacy. You can convince the counterpart that this relationship will benefit the other party. That's what we do with global south countries, with developing, underdeveloped countries. We say that, look, India is championing development initiatives. We are solving problems related to poverty and socio-economic problems. We can help you. We can work together. We tell African countries we will provide medicines. We will help you in education, healthcare and poverty eradication. We reach out to developed countries as well. Recently, when PM Modi visited France, he promoted the advantages of India's digital public infrastructure and digital payment infrastructure which India has pioneered. We rolled out UPI in France, telling France that it will benefit by working with India. Because today, the Indian economy, which is on the path to digitization, on the backbone built by the government, the digital payment and digital public infrastructure, this could benefit the other country, even developed countries. So we are offering benefits to other countries, showing what they will gain by working with India. This is also a part of Sama. Again, you are not actually doing it. Just the promise, just the gesture that you will gain by working with us is a very powerful tool of diplomacy. You're conveying that there are certain benefits you can offer to them. Next, you promise material gains. You promise certain gains. You don't give them, you promise them. Giving the benefits comes in the next tool, which is Dana. But in Sama, you make promises. You will promise that someday I will invest in your country. We will invest some amount of money in your country. We will provide assistance, we will provide aid. India said to the EFTA countries when we signed a trade agreement earlier this year with EFTA countries that look, you can benefit from our market. We will open up our market to you. See, genuinely speaking, India's prime interest with EFTA countries was to attract $100 billion investment. We wanted EFTA countries to commit under the agreement that they will invest $100 billion in India. It includes the developed economies of Europe. There are 4 countries which are part of it. Can you find out which are the 4 members of EFTA and mention that in the comments? So to convince them, we offered a material gain to them. What was the material gain? The Indian market. India said, look, we are opening up our market, which is a massive market, probably the largest market in the world. We are opening this up to your companies, to your investments. Come invest, make profits from this, and in return, make a promise that you will invest 100 billion. So we showed them a material gain, which led EFTA countries to get convinced, and eventually they signed the agreement. You look at India, Maldives. Maldives created few problems for India by taking an anti-India position, especially under Mohammad Muizzu. But as Maldives realized that it would need India's help and assistance because it's facing an economic crisis, India reached out and India said that, look, if you work with us, if you don't go against us, you will benefit. We are ready to offer material gains. We are ready to invest in your country. We are ready to give you a financial package that will help Maldives overcome the economic crisis. Whether we deliver this or not doesn't matter, that comes later. But just the promise, showing those material gains, can be a conciliatory tactic. And this has worked with Maldives. Maldives has already changed its approach towards India, reduced the anti-India rhetoric. Is that clear? So this is how SAMA can work. Then eventually the last step in SAMA, you make a compromise. Again, it's all verbal. You make a verbal compromise, you give up your interest just to show that you are ready to accommodate the interests of the other country, because sometimes your interest might be in conflict, right? So you compromise and you take a step back. Whether you will do it or not doesn't matter, that comes later. But just the intent to show the ability to compromise, to accommodate someone else's interest at the cost of your interests, sends a powerful message in diplomacy. It shows to the other country that this country is flexible, accommodative. And we did this recently with United States, when US accused India of planning an assassination of an American citizen who is a wanted terrorist in India. India said, see, we reject the allegations, but we are ready to cooperate with you. Basically, India was working out a compromise. We took a step back. When Canada made a similar allegation, we retaliated against Canada, but we can't do that with US. US is very crucial for us. So what did India do? We used conciliatory tactic. We denied the allegations that Indian government was involved in the assassination attempt, but we offered a compromise. We said, we will investigate. You share the evidence, we will join the investigation, and we'll also conduct a parallel inquiry. Whether we'll honestly investigate or not, that's secondary. But the very fact that India showed the willingness to compromise has been able to protect a US-India relationship to an extent. So these are the tactics of conciliation under SAMA. Coming to the second upaya, Dana, giving gifts and concessions, giving those material benefits which you promised under SAMA. So SAMA, Dana go hand in hand. Now comes the delivery part. See, SAMA is all about verbal promises. It's all about talks. You may not even deliver some of those promises. It's about making the gestures, sending the right messages. But in Dana, when you combine the two together, this is where you deliver some of those promises. Whatever promises you had made, you try to deliver some of that so that you can incentivize the other country. You create an incentive for them. You provide loans, provide investments, provide assistance during a crisis or an emergency. This is the strategy Kautilya suggested to the king. Countries might face problems. They might need your help. So if you are ready to step up, give that assistance, they will become indebted. They will be grateful, creating a soft power influence. See, they say money can't buy everything. That's true, but money can buy influence. You can't deny that. So India does this in our diplomacy today. We provide lines of credit. We provide these concessional loans to several developing and poor countries. Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, many countries, even in Africa, they are recipients of India's lines of credit, which are concessional loans that provides an opportunity for development of infrastructure in other countries. It provides for socio-economic welfare in other countries. We provide aid and assistance. When a country is facing a crisis, we step up, we provide the assistance needed. But Kautilya made a very shrewd and a very smart suggestion. He said, the expenditure shouldn't be very high. It should be well within your means, it should be as minimal as possible. See, I get this question from most of my students. When I tell them that India gives billions of dollars in aid and assistance, they all ask me the same question. Sir, why are we giving to other countries when we ourselves are struggling with poverty? See, please understand, what we give out as donations, aid and loans, it will gain us influence, it will protect our interests, and more importantly, we are mindful of how much we are spending. Line of credit or concessional loans, it's not charity. The loans will have to be paid back. Plus, there are many attached benefits, economic and strategic benefits. It's only aid, assistance we provide, which is like a charity or a donation. But this is well within the limits of India's economic capability. Compared to the size of our budget, what we are giving out as loans, aid and donations is very, very minimal. Governments keep it minimal. That's exactly what Kautilya suggested. Keep your cost low, ensure the impact is more. Low cost, high impact. This will generate the influence you want, protecting your interests, and it will create an incentive for the other country to be grateful towards you, to be indebted towards you. So this is a great tool of convincing others, but it should work with SAMA. For example, you can't promise something and you can't fail to deliver on that. Then you will not be trusted. Today you can't say that we will give financial support to Maldives verbally as a conciliatory tactic, and tomorrow if you don't deliver that, then nobody will trust you. So when you make a promise under SAMA, under conciliation, wherever possible, you try to deliver that under Dana. So SAMA, Dana operate together. If you deliver on those commitments, actually deliver that assistance, then everybody would be impressed. Others will also look at this. They will realize that you are a country who can help, and they will come to you. They will maintain good relations with you. This is the genius of Kautilya, which is very, very relevant even today. Look at the development assistance we provide to several developing and poor countries. In our annual budget, we set aside a certain amount for foreign development assistance, which is administered by the Ministry of External Affairs. Countries like Bhutan, Afghanistan, most of our neighbors and even other poor and developing, underdeveloped countries in Africa, South America, in the South Pacific, the small island countries, they all get these funds from India, concessional loans, aid and assistance. Even to hostile countries like Pakistan, we have given disaster management assistance. Few years ago, Pakistan was hit by devastating floods and even earthquakes. India has given financial support to Pakistan. Recently, when Sri Lanka went through its economic crisis, we delivered $4 billion worth of assistance, which uplifted the Sri Lankan economy. This is Dana. You make concessions, you give aid and assistance to create an incentive. This could include not just financial concessions, it could include making territorial concessions as well if the need arises. Kautilya suggested to the king, if required in the interest of a friendly relationship with a critical partner, don't hesitate to give away a small piece of land. Because land is available for a large kingdom, there is sufficient land, there are sufficient resources. Don't hesitate to share your resources or give away even a piece of land if necessary in the interest of maintaining a relationship. We have done this with Bangladesh. We settled the enclave issue, the land boundary issue, by signing the land boundary agreement, which required a constitutional amendment as well. And we transferred a part of Indian territory to Bangladesh to settle this issue so that we will have a good relationship with Sheikh Hasina's government. We had a maritime issue as well, right? The case went to Permanent Court of Arbitration and India agreed with the award given by the arbitration court. We transferred our exclusive economic zone. A part of India's EEZ was transferred to Bangladesh. So we have given both land and maritime territory to Bangladesh, just a small piece of it, in the interest of protecting the relationship. The Kachativu issue between India and Sri Lanka was settled in a similar manner. We showed a concession, right? Gave Kachativu for gains in other areas like Watch Bank. So India follows this principle in a way. I'm not saying that we are drawing exactly from Kautilyan thought, but what I'm saying is you can understand today's geopolitics better through the prism of Kautilyan theory. Kautilyan theory provides the logic, the explanation, the rationale behind the decisions in foreign policy taken today. Now coming to the third upaya, Bheda or sowing dissension. If a country is remaining hostile despite your best efforts, you have tried SAMA, You've tried all the 5 methods of Sama conciliation, you've tried Dana as well, and yet a country is creating problems. Then what do? Then you try to create dissent, employ the divide and rule policy. Again, examples like Maldives comes to mind. We have given a lot of support to Maldives. When we had friendly governments, relations were fantastic. But with change of governments, with emergence of pro-China leaders, Maldives has become a challenge for India. So when you have such anti-India sentiments, anti-India elements, you breed dissent. You go to the extent of meddling with their interests or breaking the alliances they have with others. You sow discord, you plant dissension so that you weaken the opponent and you divide, rule and conquer. It sounds like a cold-hearted strategy, but sometimes that is what is necessary. Is this clear? For example, look at how India isolated Pakistan from traditional allies, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. A classic strategy of Bheda or dissension. Traditionally, Pakistan was very closely aligned with Saudi and UAE, the Sunni powers of West Asia. They never criticized Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism against India in the past. Whenever there was conflict and tensions between India and Pakistan, they would support Pakistan. Sensitive issues like Kashmir, when they were internationalized by Pakistan, they would support Pakistan on Kashmir issue. But this has changed completely in the last 15-16 years. How? India worked with United States and attracted Saudi and UAE to create a dissension or breed dissent between the allies, create a dissent between the Sunni powers and Pakistan. We showed to the world that Pakistan is a state sponsorer of terrorism at United Nations. We showed to the world at FATF, Pakistan is involved in terrorist financing. Now, which country would like to work with such a country? Because eventually, the Sunni powers which are rich with oil money, they want places where they can invest, where they can build economic partnerships and conduct business. They realize that this will not happen with Pakistan. By simply being ideologically aligned with Pakistan, they will not get any economic benefits. They realize that will happen by working with US and India. After the Mumbai attacks, since we got more help in countering terrorism from US and other European partners, this brought positive pressure on Saudi and UAE to pull Saudi UAE in favor of India. They saw the size of the Indian market. They realized India is not just a buyer of oil, but a great investment destination. They realized India could be a great strategic partner. India needed their support to counter terrorism, to counter Pakistan, and this has happened in the last 15 years. This alliance has been broken through the policy of Bheda dissension, along with tactics of Sama and Dana. It's a combination of the three that you use. Today, Saudi and UAE don't support Pakistan anymore on issues like Kashmir. They abstain from those votes. When Uri and Pulwama attacks happened against India, and when India retaliated with surgical and airstrikes, these countries stood with India, which was a remarkable development, which means we have succeeded in our strategy of Bheda, which includes Sama and Dana as well, in breeding dissent between this alliance, pulling the Sunni powers away from Pakistan and pushing them to favor India. So that is an example. Now let me provide one important analysis here before we talk about Danda, the last Upaya. Sam, Dan, Bhed, these three refrain from use of force. If you observe, all the three strategies, they don't advocate the use of military force or hard military power. They refrain from the use of force, but they don't back out from using the threat of force. In Bhed, there is intimidation involved. You might intimidate the opponent, but you don't use the force. You just threaten them with force. Like India says that we will deliver significant blows to Pakistan if it conducts another attack on India. It's a policy of Bheda, right? You're threatening them, intimidating them, and offering opportunities and conciliation if Pakistan is interested. Look at Israel-Iran in the ongoing conflict. Look at how they are projecting their force, using their force in their statecraft. This is something you need to understand. In statecraft, there are different ways in which force is employed. Countries usually try to refrain. The first option is they try to stay away from a war. If you look at Israel-Iran, before the Gaza war started, both were trying to refrain from targeting each other as much as possible, at least to some extent. Even after the war started, Iran especially showed restraint, even when Israel was provoking, by targeting all the Iranian proxies. Eventually, you will reach a stage where you can't just refrain, but you will take the next step in the force statecraft equation, and you threaten your opponent. Iran started threatening Israel that look, we will attack you. Israel started threatening Iran that look, we will launch these attacks against you. And eventually, when everything fails, you will actually punish the opponent. You will actually go to war using the military option. That's what you see happening between Israel and Iran. So when it comes to employing force in statecraft, usually there is an incremental step. Countries generally try to refrain from using force. They try to rely on Sam, Dan, Bhed, right, including threat and intimidation. They threaten the use of force, but they never use the actual force. They refrain from it. But when it doesn't work, even after intimidation and Bheda doesn't work, eventually last resort will be to use the force actually, to use Danda, to punish, to go to war or use other non-war pressure options available to pressurize a country. So these are the different stages in which force is employed in statecraft. First you refrain, then you threaten and intimidate, and then you use different types of force to target a country. So when all the strategies have failed, that's when you reach the worst case option, the last resort, Danda or punishment by using force. So here as well there are different stages. Don't think Danda is just about going to war. No. As I told you, there is something called Shadgunya, which we will study in another episode. We will study about the 6 non-war pressure strategies suggested by Kautilya, which stops just short of war. Today we call this as grey zone warfare, which China often employs. What do you think China is doing in South China Sea? It's resorting to non-war pressure tactics, Shadgunya tactics. It threatens the countries, intimidates them, attacks the ships and prevents their navigation. Right? It's stopping short of full-out war, full-fledged war, but resorting to these pressure intimidation tactics, which falls under the grey zone area, which is a hybrid type of warfare. So Kautilya suggested that, look, war is never advisable. War will always have a disastrous outcome. He told the king, as much as possible, avoid a conventional war. It's too risky, there's no guarantee of a victory, it's too expensive, it could lead to humanitarian tragedy. As much as possible, avoid a full frontal military conflict. He suggested covert option is much more efficient. Kautilya calls this Sunim Yuddha. This also we will study in more detail in another episode. This deserves a separate episode altogether. Today countries resort to covert action. They may not acknowledge that, but it is a reality that every country through its intelligence agencies, they will resort to intelligence gathering, acts of sabotage, sponsoring dissent and extremist organizations, non-state actors to achieve their objectives. Look at how Israel has repeatedly assassinated Iranian officials. Look at how US has carried out regime change. The CIA has conducted so many regime changes. India's RAW has been involved in covert action in the neighborhood and beyond to protect Indian interests. Pakistan's ISI engages in covert action. So Kautilya suggested that covert option using proxies is cheaper, efficient, and achieves the desired result of putting pressure on the enemy while avoiding a full-fledged war. He said Sunim Yuddha or covert war has lot of advantages. It will minimize the human losses. You are not risking the lives of your hundreds and thousands of soldiers and hundreds and thousands of civilians. Instead, a few intelligence operatives with few proxies, non-state actors will work to carry out sabotage, including assassinations or intelligence gathering, sponsorship of extremist groups to protect your interests and threaten the other state. Just exert the right amount of pressure to push that country back, ensure that that country doesn't threaten our interests, thus avoiding a full blown out war. Is that clear? So these covert options were actively encouraged by Kautilya. We will study Sunim Yuddha in another episode. We will study Shadgunya, the grey zone warfare tactics of non-warfare pressure that stops just short of war. We will study this in a separate episode. But eventually when everything fails, let's say covert option also has not worked, Shadgunya tactics are not working, non-war pressure is also not working. Of course, Dan, Sam, Bhed has already failed. That's when you resorted to covert action and Shadgunya strategies. When all the options fail, the last resort is to go to war. And here also Kautilya laid out ethics of warfare. He said a war is justified only when a country's true genuine interests are being protected. For example, if a terrorist group is being sponsored by a certain hostile government against India, then India will have a genuine right to even go to war if necessary to punish that country. You can't create excuses, fake excuses and go to war. Kautilya said that war without a rationale, without being legitimate, can only lead to plunder, destruction, and such wars are morally reprehensible. For example, the invasion of Iraq by US and UK, they created false intelligence against Saddam Hussein. Without any basis, they accused Saddam Hussein of building WMDs. Eventually, those WMDs were never found because they never existed in the first place. Through false intelligence, they invaded the country, fought a morally reprehensible war, destroyed the country and the whole region. This is what Kautilya looked down upon. He said this is not ethical. It leads to human destruction, human tragedy. These wars are morally reprehensible. War is justified only when you are using it as a last resort in genuine national interest. When there is a serious threat to your integrity, sovereignty, to your security interests, and you have tried all the other options. First, you should try Sam, Dan, Bhed. Within Danda, use covert option, use Shadgunya, non-war pressure. Everything has failed. Only then, as a last resort, you can engage in a conflict. Given the high risk, Kautilya suggested that war should be the last option, and India can proudly say that we abide by this strategy. For India, war is always the last option. We always rely on Sam, Dan, Bhed sometimes, Danda, including covert options and non-war pressure if necessary. But going to war is the last option for India. We have never been a warmongering country or a warmongering civilization. So when Pakistan carried out repeated attacks against India, initially we showed restraint. If you remember the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, the then Manmohan Singh government showed restraint in the interest of our own country and as well as the larger regional interests. We employed covert options instead. We employed other pressure tactics instead. But eventually everything had failed with Pakistan, leaving the Modi government with very few options. So when the Uri attacks happened, this was the last nail in the coffin, and India went all out and conducted a precision strike, that too a limited strike. We didn't trigger a full-out war. Instead, we conducted a surgical strike by using special forces in a covert operation targeting the terrorist launch pads across line of control. Then when Pakistan repeated this behavior again in 2019 with Pulwama attacks, India retaliated by breaching Pakistani airspace with Balkot airstrikes and carrying out precision bombing of terror training camps in Balkot. These were limited military actions of India, but it is a clear display of military power, the employment of Danda to punish Pakistan for its repeated sponsorship of terrorism against India. So this is what we learn from Kautilya's Upayas. I hope you guys have enjoyed the session, understood the theory, the thought and the application in contemporary geopolitics. So if you are liking this initiative, you need to support us. You need to give us more comments, more likes, because that is how we will know that this initiative is useful to you if you are liking it. So that will motivate us to do better and bring out more such initiatives. So let me know what you think, and also you can join my Telegram channel for updates, and I'll share the PDF of this session as well on my Telegram channel. So that is it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, next Wednesday at 8 p.m. with episode 3 of Chanakya Niti. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.